Hello, everybody. It's Dave here from the Oilers YYC podcast. I have been tasked today to do what we call in the biz as a quote-unquote cold open, which means that instead of hearing a theme or any sort of hoopla or whoop-de-doo before the show gets underway, you just hear me talk and sort of ramble and pontificate. And what's going to happen here is that I'm going to admit that last night's game was such that I didn't watch the whole thing. I quit. I tapped out. I gave up. That 3-0 goal goes in, and I'm flipping over to Estadio Azteca to watch the Canadian men's soccer team do their thing at Commonwealth. So that's why today I'm leaning on Graham and Andrew to tell me what happened in that Jets-Oilers game, the rest of it. Unless they did exactly the same thing I did, which is probably not that unexpected, given that it was kind of a lousy game. But hey, the Oilers are doing amazing, and we can still talk about it, and everything's still rosy and fun, and we're winning. So let's talk about that. Screw the bad stuff. Let's talk about the good stuff, and maybe some of the bad stuff. This is the Oilers YYC podcast. Hello, friends.
Hey, Dave.
How are we feeling?
That was a quality pontification. I'm sorry I giggled through the whole thing.
Yeah, that was very
okay.
fourth wall of you, but you know what? It worked.
Are you guys in the same boat as I was? Did you tap out?
Yeah, it was like 11:30 or midnight my time, and when I saw the Oilers were going to stink, I'm like, you know what I could do is go to bed. And then I saw the notifications that Draisaitl scored 2 goals anyways. Like, that's neat.
Yeah, I don't feel like I missed anything, really. I mean, they lost. Draisaitl continued his relentless pace to crush scoring records, and life goes on. Graham, what did you end up doing?
Oh boy! Well, I was listening to most of the game, which was fun. I haven't done a ton of that this year, so it was nice to go around and do some Christmas shopping and listen to the game,
nice.
and then assemble and then festive up my palatial downtown YEG condo. Game was pretty bad. I think I hate the Jets, which is really hard to do because I loved living in Winnipeg. Like, one of my favorite life experiences, aside from the fact that I was heavily in active addiction at the time, although actually that probably what made it so fun, was living in Winnipeg. And so hating the Jets feels wrong, but I don't care. I do. Connor Hellebuck, good. Start for Team USA, you goober. Stop goalieing us. Being good, you jerk. I bet you're nice to your kids and your pets too, you bastard.
They're a really, really good team, and everything about the Winnipeg Jets, just their history, their death and rebirth, and their location, just everything about their story screams fun, scrappy Canadian underdog, and yet
I hate
they're
them.
really, really good, and you can't help but hate them because they beat the Oilers all the time. And yeah, I mean, they are the thorn in the Oilers' side right now. I think they're a better top-to-bottom hockey team, which is weird because...
Yeah, I guess it depends how you want to define it. Because, like, if you want to look at the Jets, like there's a great analogy that Reed Wilkins had that really kind of stuck with me, comparing Darnell Nurse to Cody Ceci. The Darnell Nurse ceiling is sky high. It is through the roof interplanetary. And the Cody Ceci ceiling is like, yeah, it's pretty good. Hey, you might be worth that $4 million, buddy. Good for you. But the bottom of each of those two players is drastically different, because Cody Ceci so far has had some rough moments. Hasn't been like puke your guts up, oh God, he's playing for Toronto bad. Whereas like Darnell Nurse has had some pretty heinous kind of bottom moments here and there too. So the Oilers are awesome. They're really fun to watch. I've been lucky enough to go to 2 games already since moving home, which is cool. But I think with the Jets, like, their ceiling, I think has a pretty limited peak, because I still don't buy I do not think Mark Scheifele is an Olympic hockey player. Blake Wheeler sucks. So I don't know if their ceiling
Kyle Connor's pretty good.
Kyle Connor's awesome. Man, he's so good.
People named Connor and either first name or last name tend to be pretty good in hockey, apparently.
That was the worst part of listening to the radio broadcast, by the way. And Connor rips up the side. Oh, he scored on Kosk. Cool. Well, that sucks. You get excited for the wrong Connor.
There are too many Connors in this game. Please remove 2. I'm not a crackpot.
You know what, though? To your point, Graham, like, the Central Division has been weirdly weak this year, and Winnipeg just happens to be the cream of that crop. And whether that means they're actually a good team,
they're good. They're a really good team.
They're good. They're a good team, but how good are they compared to, say, not necessarily us right now, but compared to like half the Atlantic Division, right? Like, or the top couple of teams in the East, in the Metropolitan Division. It's tough to tell because I watched way more non-Pacific Division hockey this year because of the time zone change for me. And the Central Division in general sucks. Like it's like shockingly a bad division. I expected there to be like a real division between like the top 4 or 5 teams there and like kind of the bottom feeders in that division. But oh man, the teams that are Nashville is 9-6-1, but like that's a complete mirage.
How dare you spit on Matt Duchesne, you jackass?
Whatever. He lives in Smashville. I don't think he feels really that bad for me chirping him from fucking Halifax. So the thing with Winnipeg is like, they're a good team. The Oilers are a good team. They're just this home and home is like right when the Oilers are struggling, and so it really kind of amplifies Edmonton's struggles and some of Edmonton's current flaws, because some of the stuff that we talked about at the beginning of the season and in the preseason, like, well, this team might struggle with this and the Oilers might struggle with that. Like, it's kind of being amplified right now. Like, Tyson Barrie, yuck. I know that Bouchard's had struggled the last couple of games, but Barrie has been a complete dumpster fire. Koskinen is getting a little bit overworked, and Skinner's been good, so I hope they give him some more games. But that Mike Smith injury is it's killing me inside right now. And I know it's the elephant in the room. The bottom 6 that is supposed to be better is somehow worse than the last couple of years' iteration, and it's still a small sample size, but we're seeing an amplification on this road trip of some of the problems the team has had, and now they're going to have to maybe address them. Maybe not immediately, but it shows that the team, might need a little something here if they're going to stick in the top 3. But actually, no, they're going to make the playoffs. I'm not worried about that. Stay outside of that dreaded wildcard spot in the West. I think that would be a rough place to be in the Western Conference right now.
Well, you guys brought up a ton of different points that I'd like to hit on. So let's start rolling through them.
Let's dissect it.
First and foremost, bottom 6 for the Oilers. There was this moment of excitement at the start of the year that, hey, we figured it out. Look at the improvements up and down the lineup. This is a well-balanced team that we can roll out there. And I would say in the last 5 or 6 games, you've started to see this bottom 6 kind of run out of gas a little bit. Do you have any sense as to why? I mean, it's
Zach
been
I think it's Zach. Zach was so good at the beginning. Zach was playing the best hockey I think we've seen since the 2016 playoffs at the start of this year. He was awesome.
Yeah, I was ready to eat my words on Zach Cassidy, and then he got hurt.
And Cass is the type of player that when he gets hurt or when he gets shuffled, it is a slow rebuild for that guy. And so when you had those first few games where Ryan and Fogle and Cassian, they look so good together. And I think a big part of that was the speed of Zach Cassian, because Derek Ryan is a very smart player. He's not a fast player. Warren Fogle has momentum and he's heavy, but he's not a fast player. Zach Cassian, for all his flaws and all his mistakes, is a really good skater and a really fast player. And that's why he was drafted, what was it, 16th overall way back when?
Yeah.
Like those skills didn't go away, and him improving himself didn't go away. But when he injures his hip, the thing you need to skate, it's really hard to get that up to full thing. And really, I almost wonder if the move that the Oilers need to make, if you can make it, is to bring in a top 6 right winger and move down Kyler Yamamoto, and yet Yamamoto be that kind of speedy annoyance to play with Derek Ryan. Because Yamamoto is playing too up the lineup, I think.
Well, he's been so up and down. Yeah.
Is this a matchups issue? Because, I mean, when we talk about the last 5 or 6 games, I mean, this coincides with a long Eastern road trip, where, coaches have the ability to, be a little more thoughtful in terms of who they put out there against these third and fourth lines. Is this a case of just not having that last change, and these guys are not being put in favorable situations like they would be at home?
I think it's a part of it. I definitely think it's a part of it.
Can't discount it, but I think for Cassian, to go back to your point, Graham, Cassian is like such a microcosm for the attitude for this team. He's a guy that rides so high on momentum and emotion that he was riding that for the first several games of the season, just playing his best hockey. The Cassian that got that extension, the guy were like, yes, he's back. And then he gets hurt, and then he's been struggling to get back in the lineup. And you're right, Graham, he's a guy that, between the injury and just the way he plays, he's really slow. He's really slow to get going. And the team has really suffered from that the last several games, especially on this road trip. Like, they don't seem to be ready to go until either a goal's scored or until like 8 to 10 minutes into the first period, whichever comes first. And that's really hard to climb out of, even for a team that's talented. So, between the matchup issues, the ref issues, the injury issues, I'm not trying to make excuses for poor performance, but, you kind of put all that into a stew and you get a really mixed bag road trip where we're having to have like miracle comebacks and always seem to have one hand tied behind our back for, in every game. Now, obviously they're coming off the road trip. Next game is a home game. That should, in theory, help. But what they have to do is find some way, whether it's to push Mo down the lineup or find a Cassian replacement, maybe, because those are probably easier fixes than like goaltending or defense. Not that the defense has been horrible. I want to preface that, but there maybe needs to be something as an insurance policy, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. They need like a Cassian insurance policy.
Can I bring up another name that you guys haven't brought up yet that is a very useful bottom 6 forward who hasn't been in the lineup in a little bit? Is Devin Shore. People dump on
That's
Devin
a great
Shore
point. That's a great point.
Because he hasn't, he got that 2-year deal and people were like, blah, 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 2 years for Devin Shore. Devin Shore's a really good bottom 6 forward and someone who, when he returns and he's 100%, should not sit in the press box at all. No. He's a solid 4th line forward. He scores goals, and he brings a bit of a spark to this team that is noticeably missing on that bottom half of the forward corps. So losing Devin Shore kind of stings when it comes to the makeup of that bottom 6.
Yeah, he's just so predictable. which is good for it. That's what you want from a guy like that. And I love that McLeod got his first goal. I love that McLeod has kind of gotten better, but McLeod almost feels miscast in the current lineup construction.
How so?
I think just because Shore is more the predictable guy, and McLeod is warming up, I guess. So like it's not so much McLeod isn't going to fit in the long term. I think it's McLeod, like his trajectory now, like he started lower than where Shore was, and between that and Cassian, it's just been chaos in the bottom six. I guess that's more McLeod's more of a symptom of the chaos.
Ryan McLeod too is just beginning his NHL career, right?
Yeah.
So he's got a lot to learn. I mean, I like the shifts where he can sort of bring that energy to the game. It's figuring out how to make that work in. I mean, I think one of the big challenges of being sort of a depth player like that is that you get limited ice time, and your shifts have to match the context of the game. Where if you're down, if you're struggling to generate emotion, the job of a third or fourth line center or third or fourth line forward has to be to sort of figure out how to inject that spark, to create chances, to play maybe a little more loose and a little more reckless than you normally would, on the edge but not over the edge, in order to just generate that emotion that's not there if the game has sort of hit a stale point. Whereas if you are a third or fourth liner and it's a tight game, or maybe you're up by a goal, then your job changes and you have to figure out how to be responsible and sort of be defensively locked in and to keep, generating positive momentum for your team at a time where things are rolling well, right? So I think that's a tough thing for NHLers, and especially new NHLers, to learn, is how to do that in the context of the pro game. And I think that's sort of what you're referring to, Andrew, is just the idea that, Devon Shore is a guy who's done this a long time, and as a veterans, and it's why coaches like veterans on these bottom six, in these bottom six situations, that they can sort of read the ebb and flow of the game a little better than someone who's sort of new at it and is trying to make their mark and may not know how to do that contextually within a game. So it's a bit of a mishmash on those bottom two lines right now, and it's tough to figure out what the immediate solution is. One of the things that's come up is third line center and Derek Ryan. Do you guys feel like Derek Ryan's a washout at this position, or do you think he needs a little more time? Where are you guys at with that 3C role? And if it's not Derek Ryan, who should it be?
I think he's playing a little high at the lineup, to be honest. I think Derek Ryan's a fine player. His face-off numbers, God, his face-off numbers are really helpful. On the games it's so interesting. One stat that always sticks out to me is when the Oilers do well, it's often because their face-off numbers, they're winning about 60%. When they don't do well, it's when Leon or Derek Ryan or even Nuge, when he gets his draws in, is having an off night. So I don't think Derek Ryan is a washout. I think 2 years for his price point is fine. But yeah, you're still looking for that like Jean-Gabriel Pageau type of player that can fill that role a little bit more effectively, because Fogel's fit that spot well. I think Cassian or Yamamoto could fit that spot well. So you either gotta potentially move Ryan McLeod to the wing and have him learn the game from a bit less of an intensive position, or acquire a 3C. But if we're talking about what's more important to the team right now, a third line center or a right winger to kind of balance out the top six, or even a left winger, and then you move Hyman over. I think a top six forward is still more of a priority, just to increase that extra scoring depth behind behind Leon and Connor.
I think in the short term, this could be a real bold play, but I think the team just has to wait it out. I think having a mixed bag road trip where matchups aren't going your way, the bottom six is having the wheels kind of fall off, although the majority of them are veterans and they'll figure it out. Koskinen's been fine, all of that. The goal against the Jets was woof. But, I mean, he's been good. I'm not going to bag on Koskinen for one bad goal. I'm just going to say
he's a backup goalie. That
they definitely need either they need to fix the goaltending in the long term, or we just need to ride it out, and this team's still going to win a lot more than it loses, and hopefully something shakes out, a little close to the trade deadline. I think this team is still the cream of the crop in the Pacific. The Ducks just passed the Oilers in the standings, but they're on an absolute heater. Even if they regress to the mean and they end up still being pretty good, the Oilers are still, 1 or 2 in this division. I don't think that's so. I think we should still be looking towards February and March and that post-Olympic break, if it happens, with COVID issues coming up, and try and find, whether it's a top 6 guy, whether it's just, again, a Cassian insurance policy, or I would, kind of hoping goaltending would be really nice. So we had a really interesting conversation about goaltending possibilities going into the trade deadline. With the amount of LTR the team's using, the Oilers could get creative, I think, with some solutions if they can just wait another couple of months and be kind of locked into a playoff trajectory. So I'm not going to panic on this road trip.
One name that really, I guess the two things of this road trip that really kind of stick in my craw, like the Oilers win 3 out of 5. That's a pretty good road trip. Cool.
It is.
You lose 2. You lose 3 out of 5. It's like, well, that's bleh. But the loss against the Oilers they've done this for years, and this definitely is like a Connor and Leon thing. As a team, they played down to their competition. I feel so much more comfortable going into games against the Torontos, against powerhouse, big name teams, the Rangers, because the players just seem to live on those big stages a lot more comfortably than they do on a Tuesday night against Winnipeg. So that to me is the thing that's definitely a little bit more concerning. Although if we're talking about goaltending, I mean, yeah, I think I'm becoming much more of the mind as if you can somehow move Mike Smith, that might have to be the play. And then you ride Koskinen for the rest of the season, which he's fine when he's not playing a ton. But the guy that keeps coming up is, going off a Chris Johnston report from last week, is Tuukka Rask. If he's open, and apparently in the last week, according to CJ, he's been much more willing to consider playing places other than Boston. I'm sorry, who needs a starting goaltender, more than us right now if a team's in a playoff position, and can you put together a package to convince Tuukka to be like, hey man, let's give it a go.
Yeah. That's a free goalie without acquisition cost, right? Mm-hmm. Because he's still technically a UFA. So, I mean, yeah, the question is, what do the Bruins want to do? Because I think the Bruins sort of have the first crack at him. But if they like Swayman and Ullmark, and then they have to move on from Tuukka at some point.
What's funny is that apparently Tuukka told the Bruins he'd play for $1 million.
Yeah.
But
teams in every team sport get really weird about succession planning when they decide it's time to move on from legendary player X. It happens in football all the time where they'll teams will cast aside good quarterbacks because they want to draft the next big thing, and then they put all their eggs in that basket. It happens in hockey sometimes too. I mean, yeah, like if you've got Tuukka Rask for $1 million, use Tuukka Rask for $1 million, and Jeremy Swayman can wait. You don't need Linus Hallmark, you know. Yeah, I mean, Rask would be great. I mean, with Mike Smith, you have to consider the possibility that he's just done. I mean, he would probably be the last person in the world to admit that, but he's also in his 40s, and he's got a nagging injury where day to day has become week to week, has become weeks to weeks, and at some point it becomes a situation where, you know, is it really worth it to come back? You know, I think there are some interesting names out there for short-term fixes. You know, if you can airlift Yarrow Halak out of Vancouver, I think that's an easy slam dunk for whichever team manages to do that, because I think he's still got some miles left in him. As a guy who's never really been a full-time starter anywhere in his career, I think that's a Dwayne Rollison type move, circa 2006, whoever gets him. Because as I said, I don't think there's a lot of miles on that odometer. You know, Koskinen's been okay. Koskinen's been better than any of us could have imagined, and save that one not save last night. He's given the Oilers a chance to be 11-4, you know, and that's good. That's what you want. And if it was, you know, Mike Smith putting up those numbers, we'd feel, you know, just as comfortable, right? So, but it's a weak spot compared to other teams in the division, and that's in other teams in the conference, and that's a problem, right? Like, it works now, you know, when you can sort of win games 5-4, 6-5, et cetera, et cetera. When you've got a 7-game series, though, and you've got Jacob Markstrom on the other end of the ice, or you've got Connor Hellebuck on the other end of the ice, suddenly that doesn't really fly to the same extent. So yeah, there's going to be a need for insurance, but I think to your point, Andrew, if you can just sort of hold off as long as possible, more options open up in terms of teams deciding to pull the pin on the season, or, you know, your LTIR pool kind of ballooning as the season goes on. So, I mean, it's going to have to happen. I think the Oilers can sort of get by now, and I don't think we're going to get into this sort of downward spiral with Koskinen where he starts letting in every, you know, first shot in every game, and he looks just sort of rattled and beaten. I think the Olympics is a really interesting side story here, and I think that's a big motivator for this guy is to make Team Finland. And, you know, his performance certainly demonstrates that this is something that he wants to do, as he's indicated in interviews and things like that. So yeah, I something's going to happen. The question is less the if and more the when it comes to what the Oilers can and will and should do when it comes to addressing their goaltending. I just want to circle back. You guys mentioned the Ducks. That is such a mirage right now, because if you look at the teams they've beaten their little winning streak, they have had the most buttery soft schedule in the month of November and even prior. Their winning streak includes wins over the Habs, the Coyotes, 2 games beating up on the Ducks, the lowly Kraken, St. Louis, Washington. Okay, yeah, that's impressive. But the Ducks have had the opportunity to beat up on the bottom feeders of the NHL, and I think once their schedule gets a little more challenging, that team falls back to earth very quickly.
How dare you say that about Troy Terry?
Troy Terry is
awesome. Correct.
Yeah. Well, once he comes back down to earth, I think the wheels will fall off Anaheim. But I think, to your point, Dave, and like I said earlier, it's still just early enough in the season that we still haven't hit the magical American Thanksgiving playoff lock, where if you are in a playoff spot, like solidly in a playoff spot by American Thanksgiving, your odds of making the playoffs are like 3 and 4. So we haven't hit that. We haven't hit that mark yet in the season. So like teams that might have goaltenders that are worth even looking at are still kind of in the mix, like Detroit, right? Like Detroit's currently on the bubble or in a playoff spot, right? The Islanders are terrible suddenly, out of nowhere, right? Like
the Islanders. That one is based on. I think the Islanders. That one is very much tied to the fact that they've been on a 13-game road trip.
Yes, I think that's a big part of it. But that's to my point, right? Like the mirage of where teams are at. Like it's too early to say that certain teams are bad or certain teams are good in that kind of that weird middle or bottom area until we've had some time. So if the Oilers can just hang on until like the Olympic break in some cobbled together form with the goaltending and get some rebounds from rebound performances, then you can get creative with some more interesting trades. In years past, when the Oilers have been in this position, I might have very much been like, you have to fix something now. But unless the Oilers really go on like a home skid, the team that we saw, at the very beginning of the season is close to the team that we're seeing now that's struggling sometimes to be into a game. And so we're somewhere in the middle with where the team actually is. And that's a pretty good team. As long as we can keep people healthy, relatively speaking, and find a better balance internally, I think they'll be fine until February, get the Olympic break over with, and then you go out and find some help, like any real contender does, to get yourself over the hump. So I'm less worried about the team than I probably would be under normal circumstances. But the team has shown that it has more resiliency than it has had in the past. So I could have come in here all Chicken Little. We need to trade for something right now, but it's not going to fix anything because there's just not a lot to trade for, and so many teams are still in mirage that when the chips fall where they need to, the Oilers are probably going to still come out ahead. So let's see where we're at in the new year.
Can we circle back? We've talked about forwards, we've talked about goaltending, but haven't talked about the decor yet, and that's something that feels like it could balloon into a bigger problem. I have some thoughts. I know, Graham, you said you had a spicy Cody Ceci take. So where do we want to begin when it comes to the Oilers defense core right now? Because they've had some capital M moments in the last little while, and I don't know if I'm really in love with what I'm seeing with that group right now. Lay your Cody Ceci take on me, Graham. Let's hear it.
He doesn't suck. He's not garbage.
I'm with you.
Whoa, hey.
I'm with you.
He has made some choices that I have had very large questions about. That being said, one of the things that I think has really harmed Cody Ceci is Duncan Keith.
Yes.
Duncan Keith is terrible. He is so bad. He is so bad. Like, he makes some absolutely galaxy brain plays at times. I think he hasn't connected the fact that his body and his abilities do not match up with some of the things that he is trying to do. I don't think that connection has been made for him yet.
Yeah.
And you have Cody Ceci, who's done a really okay job, all things considered, pulling that guy around the rink. And God, if we actually, you know what? If we want to talk about legitimate changes that the Oilers need to make to be a successful team,
Are you going to say the same thing I'm thinking? Because let's see.
Trade for 11.
No.
Oh,
okay. No. I was going to say something different, but yeah.
What are you going for?
Mine's a little more subtle. I want to see CC Nurse pairing.
Yeah, I'd watch that. I think that'd be really good.
That would be entertaining.
But do like if you, because I don't, Duncan Keith, and I'll get to Duncan Keith in a moment. Evan Bouchard is playing too high in the lineup. He's making mistakes. It's not working right now. He needs to be stapled to the third pairing and not play any higher than that. We're getting into player ruining territory if you keep leaving Evan Bouchard to be out there and make those mistakes, because he's not there yet. He's a rookie. If Evan Bouchard was playing at a first pairing caliber level right now, people would be talking about him for the Calder Trophy. You know what I mean? Like the spot in the lineup doesn't actually accurately reflect the play that we're getting out of this rookie right now. So I want to pull back his ice time a little bit. I want to see what Cody Ceci can do as a stay-at-home complement to Darnell Nurse, because I think Darnell has a little bit more of that up and down in his game. And, I would like to see how that pairing works. You're right in that Duncan Keith feels like a bit of a boat anchor. I think we've got more issues on the back end that need to be resolved between Keith, Bouchard, Barry, and finding homes for them, which might include the press box for some people, that maximize their talents. I think Slater Cuckoo and Chris Russell have been perfectly competent third pairing defensemen as well. I've really liked their game. I think Cuckoo specifically has been a nice little find as just a depth piece, in the same way that we were talking about Devon Shore earlier. And Russell's been really good too. I've liked his game. The thing with Keith that you bring up, and it's interesting that there's been so much Jerome McGinley talk, as he's gone into the Hall of Fame. And weirdly, I'm really reminded of Jerome McGinley when I watch Duncan Keith right now. And it's because if you remember those last few years of Jerome McGinley, there were certain things that McGinley could do as a Hall of Fame level player that never left him. And it was vision. It was the shooting ability. He still had moments out there where you can see, oh, that's Jerome McGinley. This is the guy who has been an all-star for a decade and a half. Here he is, even though he's 41 or whatever. But the problem with McGinley was that he was a guy who relied on his first step, his explosiveness, his ability to get around the ice. And once that left, there became this disconnect between, as you said, Graham, with Keith, what his brain is trying to do and what his body can actually do. And you see that with Duncan Keith really acutely. You see moments where you see Duncan Keith, you see the Stanley Cup winner, you see the Conn Smythe winner, you see the future Hall of Famer, and it's little things, right? It's stick work. It's how he sort of takes angles on players when he's sort of working in his own zone and playing D, but he doesn't have that quickness anymore. Not speed, but quickness, both sort of the first step and the lateral movement. And you nailed it, Graham. Like he's putting himself in situations that he can't recover from, that maybe 5 or 6 or 10 years ago he'd be fine, but you have this sort of Frankenstein defenseman where you can see a Hall of Famer and you can also see a guy who's just totally past his prime. And it's a problem because I don't think Duncan Keith sees that, and I don't know what the Oilers do with that. because as I said, there are moments where you see this smart defenseman there, but without the legs underneath them and without the explosiveness, it doesn't work.
So Nurse. So what? I guess where do you put Tyson Barrie though? Like, yeah, Keith's been really hit or miss, but Barry's been bad. Like, not good this year. We want to talk about some choices. Barry is out getting a Sando in the lobby on the power play when the puck's getting cleared to the blue line. Like, he is not in the right position. Like, I don't even saying more often than not just seems like not even close to correct. Like, he's been bad, and if we're maybe the defense is where we really need to find a fix. Now that I'm reflecting on the games I've been watching, because oh boy, even Barry on the power play has, like, the play has died on his stick way more than it should, like an alarming number of times. And if he's not producing on the power play and at least holding his own to some marginal degree at 5-on-5, then like we might be in some trouble.
So at what point do you look at other options then? In terms of calling guys up, or Lagesson back, or Sammy, or like at what point, or trades? What do you need to see at this point to decide that you want to make that switch?
I don't know. I think that if, like, we talk about the goaltending market being a bit of a graveyard for options, defensemen, like the availability of predictable defensemen like a Russell or a Cody Ceci, that's tough. Like, this team went all in on dynamo players, like a Duncan Keith, who used to be a big power play two-way guy on a Blackhawks dynasty team. Tyson Barrie, who is a rover, right? Darnell Nurse, who, good on him, but like, he activates a lot into the offensive zone. And right now, Slater Cuckoo, Evan Bouchard, and Ceci are being asked to carry a lot for those three guys. And although Nurse, I will say, holds zone a lot of the time, I don't know that there's an option, and I don't know externally that there's an option that doesn't have you eat a big old flaming pile of shit to get it done. And you just kind of have to wait it out. I think, just like with the goaltending, I don't think there's an imminent fix for the problem. I guess I struggled to see. I think Evan Bouchard started off good, probably needs to get switched and have Nurse carry Tyson Barrie as best as he can, and have Bouchard have a rebound, and then he can move back up. But I don't know how you take CC away from Duncan Keith and expect anything but disaster.
I think Bouchard needs some press box time. I really do. I think that it feels like he's kind of underwater right now, and even a couple of games just watching might settle him down. Because he just looks like the game's moving too fast for him.
Yeah, I think sometimes I can't argue with you there. I mean, it makes for a boring podcast, but yeah, I think it's time to sit Evan Bouchard, let Chris Russell play on his off wing for a handful of games, and let him kind of reset and move forward.
Yeah, I think that's the solution too. Lagesson had a lousy training camp, but he's had good moments in the past, and he's a different type of defenseman. I wouldn't mind seeing him back in the lineup for a couple of games and back in Edmonton. Sammy's a question mark that I would love to figure out what his progression is like, and see if there's an opportunity to give him a couple of shots. That probably doesn't happen without an injury at this point, but I would really be curious to see what he brings at the pro level. Training camp was really unfortunate, but I think he was like Bouchard in that he was a guy who was pegged to the organization was ready to give him a bit of a rub and to sort of boost him up the lineup. So it'll be really fascinating to see how they manage him once he's completely healthy and ready to go, especially if there's a thought or a desire that there needs to be some changes on the back end. So, and look, I guess that the overarching thing that contextualizes a lot of these discussions that we're having is that the team is 11-4. The team is winning far more hockey games than they're losing. But you can see, and this is not Oilers fans being, just grouchy, cranky Oilers fans like we always are. The team is winning, and yet you can still see these problems that are very self-evident that need to be corrected in order to push this team along in its journey to becoming, truly 100% elite,
Well, and one thing that is really nice, though, is that while we're in this kind of lull and down spot, after the game against the Jets, the schedule gets really nice. You go Hockey Night in Canada against the Blackhawks. Then you got the Stars on Tuesday. You got a Wednesday against the Coyotes, who might be worse than the 76 Washington Capitals when they were playing at the knockoff Saddle Dome. Good Gord. Fuck, that team is bad. Then you got the Golden Knights, who should be a little healthier by then, and then the Penguins. But you're starting a run where you're going Blackhawks, Stars, Coyotes, Golden Knights. Who knows what they are? The Penguins are weird, and then you got Kraken, Kings, Wild. The schedule doesn't get really tough again until mid-December. And
that homestand though, that'll be really nice. Other than the Seattle games, it's a lot of home cooking. So in theory, the team should do quite well in the next month.
Now let me, because we are heading back home for the the Jets game and as you say, this sort of extended homestand here. Let me touch on something that you brought up, Graham, early on in the podcast, and that you've been to a couple of games this year. You obviously are the only one of us who actually lives in Edmonton these days. And, I went up for the opener and I shared some thoughts on sort of, experience and game presentation.
Sadly, I didn't get any Tony Brower monologues. I really missed out.
Oh, no. Yeah, that's sorry. Yeah, I feel bad for you, man. You didn't ask for a refund. What did you make of just the vibe at Rogers Place these days? Because that's been a point of discussion, not just in Edmonton, but throughout the NHL, is that attendance is kind of down in a lot of places where you wouldn't expect attendance to be down. One of those places is Edmonton. That being said, the last home game before the road trip was maybe one of the best home games in years and one of the loudest too.
Outside of
at with
I think. I mean, I wish I would have went to that Rangers game. I love the Rangers.
Yeah.
I just didn't have the money, and I was like, ugh.
So where are you at with fan experience right now, from what you've seen in your experience there?
It's so hard. Because I don't think you can. I don't think you could ignore the fact that the games are being held in a province whose COVID handling has been deadly. I don't think I think there's still a lot of trepidation to go indoors with that many people, and I can totally understand that. So the first game I went to was against the Philadelphia Flyers, and I will say that game had a nice kind of raucous energy. The Oilers hadn't lost yet. It was really fun. The game itself was great. And so, despite having a crowd of about 15,000 people, maybe 14 even, it was definitely raucous and it was definitely engaging. It was definitely excited to be there. Now, the in-game presentation at Rogers is
You're trying to think of the nicest way to say it that you
It's-
possibly can.
And you know what? And a lot of this is because I've spent so many years going to Flames games. The Flames put on a fun game.
Yes, they do.
It's fun.
I'm with you 100%.
Like the music is good, the energy is high. There's just
you got
stuff.
Willie juicing, banging the organ up top. You got fire shooting out of things. You got
the retro nights are really good.
The retro nights are fun. The one super and it's corny as hell, but it's the good kind of corny when you go to a Saturday night game and they do the faux SNL intro.
Oh, that's awesome! Every time it's awesome.
It's a blast. It's a blast. It's so much fun. I mean, I have to say, I think part of it is actually being in an old barn as opposed to a shiny new. It's a bus station versus airport, but sometimes it's more fun to watch a hockey game in the bus station than the airport.
I think that's specifically the old Greyhound bus station, off of where Calgary Next was supposed to go.
Yeah, did you know that they were using that as a COVID testing site in the early days of the pandemic? So if you want post-apocalyptic,
wow,
they picked the most post-apocalyptic location for their pandemic testing, because that bus station was something. But the Flames do it more fun. They do it more fun, and there's an element of fun. And I think that's a good word to use in the way that they just present the game.
I think the one thing I can take away from going to Rogers is that it always feels very serious. It is. We are here for hockey, and we're gonna have really
church of hockey.
Well,
you are true hockey fans. You don't need the bells and whistles because you have an appreciation for how brilliant it is what you're seeing right now. You understand the holiness of this game that we are about to present to you. So you don't need goofy shtick. You don't need mascots, throwing pies at people. You are just here for the hockey and nothing else because you are true Canadians.
I think that could be a part of it, but like you look at the in-game setup, it's like very into like base heavy, and then that's kind of it feels, you know what it is? It's industrial. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
It's a very industrial sort of game, and not in like that sort of funny Pat Quinn, we're gonna work hard kind of way.
I can't promise you playoffs.
God, I love that promo so much. I swear we talk about it in our group like every 6 months, and it's never not funny.
It's like our quarterly reflection.
I just remember being at that game and just be going, "Oh God, it's come to this. It's come to this, hasn't it?"
So, like, I think the things that Rogers does have going for it is when you do see like true magic. Like at the Philadelphia game, Leon Draisaitl made passes that I looked at my buddy that we went to the game with, and we were just like, how, what, how? Because you can see everything so much. But
yeah,
I mean, honestly, the thing that does bug me most, I think, about Rogers is it is hard to tell when the other team scores.
Yeah.
And it's actually hard to tell when anyone scores until the horn kicks in. This is such a dumb thing, but I love a goal light.
You need the red light back. Yeah.
Like, and the red light's there. It's just really small and it's really late. Where you look at the Saddle Dome or the Jets or you know what? Vancouver is the perfect example. When the Canucks score, like their entire rink lights up and smoke starts coming out. It's a thing. And when the Oilers score, you hear a horn and you see a spotlight that's not really strong.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't feel like a production event like other other places do. God, when you watch when the Carolina Hurricanes score, you have smoke coming out of everywhere. You have specific spotlights on specific players, and they have a giant red light that just blinds the hell out of the goalie. That rules.
Or in Vegas, the V's coming out of the corner with the fog. Like that's cool. That's awesome. And I think that there is a reluctance in Edmonton from just the organization as a whole. And I mean, going back to the season opener, I was driving back on the QE2, driving back to Calgary, listening to Gregor and Tom Gazzola talk about the lousy game presentation, because Gregor was fired up about this. This was the topic of conversation on Edmonton Sports Radio the day after the game, was just how kind of flat everything felt. And Gazzola, who worked for the team for a very long time and left, he said there were creative people with creative ideas that just could not get their way of thinking accepted in that organization, and they went on to do other things because it is an old school mentality that does not prioritize fun or risk taking or any of that, and that leads over into the presentation. And what I would hope the Oilers realize at some point is that on the ice, what you have is the Harlem Globetrotters. So give us some Harlem Globetrotters presentation.
Yeah.
Ramp up the fact that you are seeing shit that no one else gets to see in the world of hockey. You are seeing Globetrotter level shit. He's spinning the puck on his finger, things like that, right? Like he's using a freaking ladder. It is just remarkable stuff that we're seeing. And you talk about, being with your buddy and seeing the Leon Draisaitl stuff. I mean, this, you can emphasize this without being cocky, without being, without it coming off as over the top. You can emphasize this stuff and just focus on the fact that you are seeing, as a fan buying a ticket, you are seeing remarkable shit every night from the Edmonton Oilers. And,
you're not wrong for sure. You're not wrong at all. I really think it's little things would help. Like just little things, like leaning into the fact that hockey is fun intrinsically. Because and a lot of, unless the game is good, like the game doesn't feel fun. And God, me and my friend Kelly went to the Nashville game that we won 6-3 or whatever it was. One of the most boring games I've ever been to, and it was a 6-3 win, and it was dull.
Yeah.
And that's
this goes back to you would go to games at Rexall or Northlands or whatever, and the play would go on, and people would just be quiet and just studying the game and thinking about what they were seeing, and they'd be engaged, but they just shh, don't talk, the hockey's on, and that feels like a relic of a distant past, specifically when you look at the prices that they're asking us to pay for this entertainment event.
Well, you don't even have to pay. I mean, you don't even have to pay them anymore. Like a buddy of mine, like me and Ethan paid.
Sure.
We paid $100 a seat for row 2 upper deck, middle of the rink. Paid $100 a seat. Like if we wanted to pay $50 to go see a Wednesday night game against Philadelphia, we could have. Oh boy, could we have?
Yeah.
So
man, I miss that. And hey, if I worked at the office in Edmonton instead of Calgary, I'd be able to walk to my seat at the game without stepping outside once. Which
here, you know what? Nice. Let's just a quick thing here. Let me pull up a StubHub right now for the Oilers and Jets tomorrow, because Googling things on a podcast is really, really kicking content. The allure of the. Oh my God, there's row 11, upper 231. There's 2 tickets for $80.
There you go.
It's not expensive, and that's Jets. So obviously you get some Winnipeg expats. Let's take a look. What's here the Blackhawks Saturday night hockey night in Canada. $120 a seat. Again, that's not here. Perfect example. The LA Kings, Sunday at 6:00.
Yeah.
Take a guess what the entry ticket level price is just to get into the barn.
$80.
40.
61.
Wow.
That's not bad.
Let's take it one step further. Oh, this go Tuesday, December 7th. How much is it going to cost you to go see the Oilers and Wild?
55.
Oh God, I'd pay someone to take the tickets from me.
$51.
Ooh, I was
There
close.
you go.
So, like, it's not.
Wow, I overpaid for my tickets then.
I don't know, guys. It sounds like some tier 2 fan shit. I don't know what you guys are complaining about.
Fuck off, Halifax.
Well, let me touch on a point that you raised about the goal songs. When we were hosting the Seattle Kraken, no one thought to realize that their song for when the opposition scores is "Barracuda" by Heart, which is absolutely a Seattle Kraken song, considering it was fucking Ann Wilson who sang the national anthem at their opener, and Heart is as Seattle of a band as Heart is as Seattle of a band as fucking Nirvana is. So maybe don't play the Heart song about a sea monster when the Kraken score in Edmonton. Other than that, yeah, I'm with you. The one key that I've discovered though to make the experiences a little better is once you figure out how to navigate these stairwells for maximum effect, so you can actually get to the 99 Studio 99 or whatever and have a quick beer in the intermission and come back up to your seats 40 stories above the rink. Once you figure out the nooks and crannies of the building, things do get a lot easier.
They really are. It's a great building. I mean, honestly, my biggest gripe with it is that it's too big, too cavernous. Mm-hmm. Like, I think you're really going to see. Yeah, I think you're really going to see with, hopefully the Flames make it small and intimate.
Yeah, right.
With
Get the fuck out of here.
With that Amazon fucking warehouse of a stadium.
They're absolutely no. They're basically gonna move into the Amazon warehouse out in Balzac. That's what's gonna happen. They're gonna realize it's too expensive to build an arena. And you're like, you know what? They got some extra space.
This is a total side note, but boy, there is just a complete lack of civic excitement for that building in this city, and part of it is that the renderings seem to get uglier and uglier every time.
God, it looks like
reveal
a
it.
It keeps getting so much worse.
Well, I think what happened was, and I have nothing to base this on other than just sort of logic, but the first renderings of this building were cool. Kind of, they looked cool. You know what they also looked like? They also looked like the arena in Seattle, where you enter the top of the stadium at street level, and then it's sunken in. And there's a kind of obvious problem with that plan when the arena is next to the Bow River.
Yeah.
So I'm sure what happened was the engineers looked at that and looked at water tables and things like that and went, guys, this doesn't make sense at all. We can't do this. And as a result, the sleek, modern, street level facing arena turns into this, 20-story box.
It turns into a Sport Check outlet store.
Yeah. So there's not a ton of excitement here for the new rink, and I think people are very aware that new rink equals expensive tickets. But I really wonder if I didn't see this anywhere from any of the local media or any of the national media. I wonder how much the pursuit, and it obviously was unsuccessful, but the pursuit of Jack Eichel, the pursuit of just someone with that sort of superstar cachet, was less about he can help us win now and more about we need a kick in the butt in this market to really get people jazzed about the Flames again.
I think people are burnt on the Flames. Like, if you look at like they almost won the goddamn President's Trophy and then they choked.
Definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And that's I think you're right. I think that is leading to a little bit of the apathy with this team here in the city. That things look great now. They're doing well. Daryl seems to be working as a concept.
I mean, you're dancing around it. I mean, it's Sutter's second go at the job. Like, talk about the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expect different results. Holy crap!
You're bringing back the same guys that couldn't get the job done last year or the year before or the year before that.
I have a weird idea. I have a weird thought, and y'all can tell me if I'm crazy. Are Flames fans just bored of seeing the same players? Because I would be.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to that. I really do. I think that boredom is an interesting way to put it because, how do you generate excitement in sports? You generate excitement through selling hope and selling the idea that what you are seeing will lead to results and success. And
it's cool to see different jerseys, just straight up. Like, it's really cool to see, like, oh, hey, that guy shelled out for a Zach Hyman jersey. That guy got the Zach Hyman jersey with his name in Hebrew. That's awesome. Like
we're the idea that, we're trying things, we're tinkering with things, and maybe maybe Zach Hyman or Warren Fogle is the secret sauce. We don't know, but there's always in sports, there's always this continual desire to improve and get better. And unless you have superstars, unless you have guys that are beloved members of the team, you're always kind of hoping that your team just finds new blood, and brings in new players and goes and is actively doing things to make the team better. And I mean, Flames fans will yell at me if they hear this, because they'll be like, how dare you? We got Blake Coleman. But Blake Coleman doesn't move the needle.
I forgot Blake Coleman was a Calgary Flame.
There
straight up.
So, I think boredom is an interesting way to put it, and I think you're onto something. I think there's lots of, because Calgary's having the same attendance woes as Edmonton is, and there are lots of reasons as to why in terms of external factors and on the ice factors and things like that. But I wonder if that organization is looking towards the point where they have to start selling tickets and suites and loge seats or whatever they'll have in that new building, and thinking, man, we really should figure out a way to get people excited about this team. And I mean, they're winning now. Well, they're having a great season. But,
they are, but to speak to your point, Dave, about superstars, like Johnny Gaudreau has been all but traded for the last 3 years in some capacity or another.
He's so good,
right? And then like Kachuk, everyone's like, "Oh, is he staying?" Like, "Oh, like his qualifying offer."
He's not.
But
I'll
that's
tell you
it's
why.
It's a temporariness of their superstars.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. And because the whole qualifying offer thing puts them in a massive bind, and they signaled to the market that Matthew Tkachuk was not staying. Every day that he's not captain of the Calgary Flames, they are signaling to the market, don't bother buying that 19 jersey because we're not keeping him. Because this was a guy who was pegged to be the captain of the team. There were so many rumblings that this guy just had it as a leader. And now somehow Brady's the team captain before Matthew is? If you said that 2 years ago, people would look at you like you had a third eye. It's they and then his name comes up in all of these, and the team doesn't really do a ton to tamp them down. I think they've moved on. Let me put it this way: this is the last ride. This is the last waltz for this Flames group, because out of necessity, they kind of have to blow it up after this year.
Is it symptomatic or endemic that the team seems to not have a shred of loyalty? And I'm not saying that teams need to show loyalty to assets that don't provide them any value or play. When you got to cut loose a player, you got to cut loose a player. But like we're kind of dancing around the idea, like the Flames just don't have a loyalty to any of their players. So why would the fans show any loyalty? What are you
talking about? They have an overabundance of loyalty.
The organization doesn't. They let Gio go for nothing to Seattle. They've indicated that Kachuk's
I don't know that,
and they've all but traded Gaudreau.
That's looking pretty good right now, letting Gio go.
I'm not saying it was a bad decision in hindsight, but I just mean like it's an attitude thing, right? Like I
don't know if you would characterize it as a loyalty thing. I think that they have been trying to hit their version of Connor McDavid Pater for a while and have not really settled on the guy to make that work.
Loyalty might be the wrong word. Maybe it's commitment. I don't know. There's something like about the way they seem to go about their top guys that other teams just don't do.
Yeah, and you're right. And there should have been at least one guy in recent Flames history who they said, we are going to make you a Flame for life. And it probably should have been Gaudreau after his massive season. I'm sure he wants to go to the States and back east and things like that. But I mean, he has expressed a willingness to stay.
What makes you say what aside from the fact that he's from Jersey? Like, I see that and I don't get it. Like, he's said over and over, like he owns a gorgeous house up in Upper Mount Royal. Like, he's been there for a long time. He seems to like it there. His fiance, I'm pretty sure, is Calgarian. I don't. Where's this? Aside, if he was an American, no one would say this shit.
Yeah, but this goes back to Andrew's point where they've never. If they offered him an extension that reflected his value, he would put pen to paper, but they haven't. So Johnny Gaudreau has spent the last few years eyeballing this free agency date of July 1st, 2022, and thinking about his future, Like, is that on Johnny or is that on the Flames for not locking up such a significant piece? Like, I can't remember where I heard it, but, in points per game, he is going to be the biggest player to hit the free agent market in years in terms of his skill level, the offensive production that he can put up. And so he's got a jackpot ahead of him. So, the Flames had a window to sign him and they missed it. And that's the story.
That's fair. I'll give you that one.
Yeah, although that might be a Tree Living problem because Tree Living continues to swing and whiff on virtually everything he does. And how much of that is an organizational failure based on who's in charge and how much of that is on the player wanting to actually leave.
And how much of that is on ownership not willing to make those commitments too.
Maybe, loyalty was probably the wrong word, but I don't know. The Flames seem to be in this weird, have been for a while, even when they've been good, in this weird in between where like they need to kind of shit or get off the pot with, are you going to commit to these guys or not? Because you could have a pretty deep team, and they're good this year again. So I'm not trying to discount their start, and I think they might end up being, a solid playoff team. But they're chasing these whales like an Eichel, but how much of it is maybe you should try and like build with what you got, or are you just gonna just cut bait now because you kind of been one foot in, 1 foot out with these guys for years now.
Well, and here's what's going to be your proof of concept for this entire discussion is Andrew Mangiapane.
Mangiapane kicks ass. He's so good, dude.
He's shooting like
Hell
30-some% right now. Like, holy shit.
He is.
He's been great, don't get me wrong.
He's a free agent this summer with arbitration rights. So the question is going to be, are they going to punt the football on him, or are they going to do what we've been saying that they should do and lock this guy up as a cornerstone of their franchise for an indefinite period of time? And that's a fascinating discussion because, I mean, boy, if I'm looking at the Flames, I feel like that needs to happen now. And you commit to this guy. You say, we're all in on you. You are the next Johnny Gaudreau, you know?
Oh, breaking news. Breaking news.
Uh-oh.
Canucks fans are chanting "Fire Benning."
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Colorado has been terrible. I've been watching the scoreline and like the reaction.
And
they're losing.
And I'm assuming this is a plant by Jim Benning's people. Someone has a sign that says "Thank you, Jim" in the corner of the ring.
I saw that. That was amazing. Like you cannot dream up a storyline better than, you know, Jim Benning having a very serious conversation with ownership after everyone expects him to be fired, and then lo and behold, at the glass pregame, there's a sign that says "Thank you, Jim." It's like,
but before we wrap this podcast up, can we talk about that fucking meeting? Because, like,
oh my goodness,
what is that?
What dirt does Jim Benning have on the Aquilinis?
If you
I want to know.
Thomas Drance and the Athletic just ethering the Canucks organization on that meeting and just the way it was leaked and reported and everything like that. It's a fantastic piece, and it just speaks to the level of insane Chiarelli level dysfunction in this organization right now.
It screams of that "I think you should leave" sketch where Tim Robinson is dressed up in a hot dog suit screaming, "We're all trying to find the guy that did this."
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's going to have to spank his bare balls back and butt. You know, he's got to do it.
Yeah. I just want to see Jim. I just want to see Jim Benning running down fucking running across the Granville Street Bridge screaming, "You're dog shit! You're dog shit!" as the Aquilinis run behind him in a fucking hovercraft.
I honestly don't know how Jim Benning still has a job. Like, we've talked about, like, how Tree Living seems like he's on a short lease. Like, I don't know how Jim Benning is still the GM of the Vancouver Canucks. I don't know how they greenlit trading for OEL and Connor Garland, which actually has been weirdly working out.
Connor Garland was,
but that's a huge move, and I don't know how this. I guess I don't understand how Jim Benning still has a job. I guess
those are separate moves, though. And the Connor Garland move kicks ass. Connor Garland's awesome.
No, he's been great. I don't know how you even give this guy a chance. Like, it's like a classic Jim Benning move. Like, you move out a bunch of like bad money to bring in bad money, and Connor Garland's like, well, I guess we got Connor Garland, so it's okay. It's like, are you sure it's okay? Just because, like, there's a really nice, big, tasty bit of whipped cream on that pile of shit.
OEL has been fine, and fine has exceeded expectations for OEL. I just, you know, I dip in and out of other markets, sports radio. I think Vancouver actually has some really talented people doing sports radio in that town or podcasts.
It is criminal how that market is under-supported for sports. Ugh.
Yeah. And you know, listening to like Sakaris and Price or Donnie and Dhaliwal, and I was listening to some of their stuff prior to the season, and you know what the biggest source of excitement was in Canucks Nation? I shit you not, was the potential emergence of PTO superstar Alex Chiasson. Like,
yeah, that'll fix your bones.
There was a real disconnect between what the team was and what people in the market thought it was. And if everything went right for the Canucks, they'd be sort of in the mix as in the old Western Conference days, they'd be one of those 6, 7, 8 teams that would, maybe squeak in, maybe not, right? And that's if everything went right. To be fair to the Canucks and to Benning, everything's gone wrong. Like, can you predict that Elias Pettersson he's like Richie Tenenbaum in the Royal Tenenbaums, where he just sort of sits down on the ice and takes off his skate and is just sad? Like, he's bafflingly bad at hockey all of a sudden. Can you plan for that? Can you deal with that? I mean, that's crisis number one that the Canucks have to figure out. It's a market where I think they got a little bit too high on their own supply and really overestimated what they had. And when those projections don't come to pass, I mean, this is the obvious consequence of it, right? The team should be better. They should be a lot better.
I feel dumb. I thought they were going to be pretty good.
I didn't think they're going to be this bad, to be fair, yeah.
They are the Oilers 5, 6 years ago, where there's lots of top-end talent, but it's young and inexperienced, and then there's nothing underneath. Nothing. And that's not something that's a quick fix. It takes time, it takes patience. But I mean, if you're a Canucks fan, you've been patient for a very, very long time. 10 years to be precise, right? And it doesn't feel like there's any pathway to this team getting better because they're capped out. They've got a goalie. They've got a great goalie. They've got some nice pieces up front. Quinn Hughes will be good, but there's not much else. And the obvious move is to gas your front office and gas your coach. But
scorchers that shit.
They've committed to them. Like who's going to be in town this weekend at the fucking Father David Bauer Arena? With 100 other university hockey fans. He's going to be standing on that bench? Mike fucking Babcock. He's right there. If the Canucks wanted to blow this up, and say what you will about Babcock and him being a jackass, everything like that, he'll be back in the NHL. It's the NHL. We know it. Deal with it, I guess. But if an athlete,
I'm just tough. I have relearned my ways. I've worked really hard.
Can you have Babcock? Got that gem. Gonna get the Canadian players looked in shape.
I'm nice now.
I'm not mean to the parking attendant anymore.
That's what it'll be. That's what it'll be. And Aquilini in that market too could fix that with a fucking phone call to Saskatchewan. 306 bup. And Mike, you want to come fucking coach the Vancouver Canucks? Next flight out of Sask to Vancouver, and he's there, and every Canucks fan and Colin show will be like, "Oh, he's changed. He's different. He's nice now."
I would like to point out that I feel like we need to differentiate the fact that we are saying these as fans who fully recognize the utter joke that Oilers management has been in many differing forms. Like, we're not saying we're
takes one to know one.
We've been there, man. We
for like a Vancouver
we
or
understand this intimately.
Yeah, for like a Vancouver or Calgary buddy who's listening to this and is just like seething, being like, glass house. Oh yeah, no, we know.
We are standing on the shards of that shattered glass house. We get it. We know. We've been there. It's okay. We
We are riddled with cuts and burns.
Bleeding out, need to go get a tetanus shot, like ASAP.
We're just riddled with our glass house tetanus.
Our house is built on shards of glass, tetanus, and lies.
Okay, before we go, because we've been at it for a while, because we've had a ton to pour over.
Yeah, it's not even 1 a.m. here. Like, what are you guys talking about?
There you go.
Let's go.
Yeah. You don't have anything to do tomorrow, or today, or whatever. Let me touch on something that kind of came up in this last conversation. Who's the first coach to get fired, and who is the most obvious replacement candidate or candidates? You know, there's noise about Montreal, which would have seemed unthinkable earlier this year. Vancouver seems obvious, but maybe not. You know, there's some good coaches floating around there. I was personally hoping for John Tortorella in Toronto when that was all going to hell, but the Leafs have turned it around, unfortunately. So, what do you guys foresee in terms of first? I guess Colleton was the first coach to go. I should say that.
Yeah, I want the next coach. The next coach.
Next coach to go. Who's on the hot seat right now?
Well, it's Travis Green, but apparently, who the fuck knows in Vancouver?
I'm gonna go a little off the board. I'll say Rick Bowness.
I don't feel like that's off the board. Dallas has been not good. I think it's not off the board so much as that no one's paying attention to that, but it's like it's a giant pile of turd down in Texas that people are just kind of holding their nose and walking past.
Well, I can see Rick Bowness being the type of guy who's like, you know what, I'm done. I don't have it in me at this point. Rick Bowness might walk away just as easily as he could get fired, you know.
This is a pipe dream. It'll never happen, but it'd be so funny it did. As if like Rick Bowness got fired, or even, I mean, Granato has been pretty good for Buffalo, so you can't be that mad. I don't even know who's coaching in Arizona.
Former Canadian team guy, Andre Tournier.
Yeah, well, they're supposed to be shit, so it's fine.
Yeah. No one expects anything from them.
I really hope that at some point, some general manager, Jim Nill, is going to go dive into his closet and see just a plain heathered gray sweatshirt that just says hockey on it, and go, by God, that's Ken Hitchcock's music.
Yes.
And just bring him back again.
Oilers coaching legend Ken Hitchcock.
I want it to happen.
Like I've forgotten that happened so many times. You know what I mean? Like I can't tell you how often that fact has come into my brain, and I go, "Oh yeah, he was the coach.
He's still employed by the team, man. He's a consultant."
There you go. Good old Hitch. I'll go off the board too. I think that if mediocre is the name of the game in Denver for the next little while, I think Jared Bednar might be done. If that's a team that feels like they are underachieving significantly and they want to be in the mix with the top dogs in the West, maybe you do something drastic and kick Bednar to the curb, because he's been there for quite some time.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I still think it's Travis Green, because I think that's I want to know. Of all the things that Jim Benning could teach, it's how to manage up, because that motherfucker can manage up like nobody's business. Like, we talk about how Pierre Dorian is like a great at managing up to Melnyk. There is nobody better at managing up than Jim Benning, and that has to be the last card in his deck, is firing Travis Green to save his season. So that seems like such an easy answer.
Yeah.
So as much as things seem to be completely gong show, topsy-turvy, who knows? It's got to be him. Like, the Canucks are just an empty net. They're probably going to lose to the struggling Avalanche tonight. It's got to be him. He's got to be done by the end of the month if they continue to struggle. If anything, just Jim Benning's career.
I'll just say fuck and walk too. That might be the other.
You might just not show. You might just not show for
because he
practice.
sounded. Just go AWOL. That's a good way.
Yeah, he'll just send like a box of chocolates.
He's an NHL coach.
Sorry.
Hey, you know what? Just wait. Patrick Waugh is going to arrive in either Denver or he's going to arrive in Montreal.
Yeah.
Make it happen.
He's the guy. He's the guy who I can see getting parachuted in on this one. Hey, before we go, I wanted to circle back to one of the very first things you said in this marathon podcast, Graham, today, and you were talking about. And this will give you an opportunity to say nice things about your colleagues because I want to do the same. You were talking about listening to the game on the radio, and that's something I've been doing recently, just with weird work schedules and moving and things like that. And I have to say, like Jack on TV, Jack's great. I'm really enjoying listening to Cam Moon on the radio, man. Like he calls a hell of a hockey game.
Oh yeah, I want to meet him so bad. Like I'm not gonna lie, I've genuinely like considered in what way I could like find myself to have a purpose to be at the radio station for some reason when Cam Moon might be by. Because everyone I've talked to have asked about him. He's apparently just like the nicest person.
I've met him. I've met him a few times. I did some work in Red Deer when the Memorial Cup was there, and just a A+ dude.
And he calls a wicked game. He calls such a good game, and it's so I love Cam's call because he really. This is a great thing of what the Oilers really could do. He leans into the silliness and the fun of hockey.
Yeah.
Which I really love, and it's really funny to hear because you Stoff is great. We all have Stoff. Stoff can get very serious and pontificating about the game, and it's really funny to have that bouncing off a guy who almost has this like Darren Pangish like energy.
Yeah.
Convenient that they were both goaltenders.
Cam Moon's superpower has been.
I'll tell you this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Andrew.
I just want to say Cam Moon's superpower. His superpower has been keeping Stauffer in line, even in a way that Jack Michaels couldn't, because they would go off on those college football tangents for 5 minutes when the Oilers had like 2 goals scored against them. Like, oh yeah, I guess we should call the game too, hey? And he's just. I've listened several times to his calls. He's a really good balance while also bringing a lot of the same but somehow different energy that Jack Michaels did to the radio call. So I really enjoy him. So yeah, I'll pump his tires as well.
You know what too? I mean, the thing that jumped out at me listening to, driving around and moving boxes back and forth between old place and new place. So there was a lot of hockey listening. Cam Moon, his call, specifically his goal calls.
Oh, his goal calls are so good.
There's a lot of Rod in those goal calls, and that's pretty awesome to hear. His scores are Rod Phillips scores, and that comes from a guy who grew up listening to Rod Phillips. So hearing that on the radio is a lot of fun. You can tell the influence is there. And I guess before we go, Rod was not. Rod's getting up there age-wise, and Rod was not at the Kevin Lowe thing, which was a little bit noticeable and kind of a bummer. So we hope Rod's doing okay and doing well, because I'm sure, like myself, you guys grew up listening to Rod Phillips calls as well. Mm-hmm. It's so great listening to Cam Moon sort of emulate that, and listening to a game on the radio, which, as I said, I've been doing a lot of. Still a great way to experience a hockey game, and if you've got good people calling it, it's a great way to spend your time and appreciate the game. And if you've got a good crew calling the game,
I'll take a sec here just to brag about some coworkers some more. I've been really lucky. I've worked with a lot of our technical producers and our studio producers. They do a lot of stuff over on the AM side, and like we don't, I handle with them a little bit on Chuck, which is fun. It's a really, really, really passionate, excited group of people. I know the technical producers don't necessarily get the love that they should sometimes, but oh boy, I've listened to some games in some other markets with some, shall we say, fresh hands on the board, and it takes a lot of work together to make those broadcasts sound as good as we do. So I'll give our technical staff from Kellen and Angie and the whole and Cody, the whole crew. They really deserve it. They do a great job.
They are the unsung heroes of any broadcaster. You don't notice bad audio until it's bad, and when you have the best of the best working for you, you don't notice bad audio because you don't have bad audio. So
thanks, Manny.
They are the backbones, and this goes back, as you said, to our wonderful technical expert guru. Manny has been on the board, the virtual. Is it a board or just your laptop, Manny?
It's a software audio board system.
There you go.
The digital.
I would like to think it's a board.
Boards are more fun. They're more tactile, but this works too. So
it does the same thing. Potato.
So we'll wrap things up for today. I think we had a healthy length on this podcast too, which is awesome. So hopefully this got you. We used to measure podcast length and driving distance from Calgary to anywhere else. So this probably got you past Red Deer north,
Fault.
which is always Black Fault. Yes, that's right.
It's silly season if we make it to Olds.
Are we Lacombe? Are we Blind Man Brewery? Is that the distance?
I think we're almost there.
That's a place. Once summer arrives, I think that's a place I need to make a pilgrimage to. Anyway, before we get too off topic, thanks everybody for listening. As always, this is always just a fun, opportunity for us to catch up, to chat, to talk Oilers and all sorts of other things, and to sort of bring listeners into it. And we have to say we really appreciate the loyalty of people who keep downloading this podcast and keep being a part of it. We don't do the pubcasts as often because we're all on different sides of the country now, but maybe we'll get back to it one day, as Manny and I are still in Calgary, so is Pete, and we're all North Enders these days, so maybe we'll scout out a north side Calgary watering hole to plop the gear down and have an in-person podcast and do some Skyping and bringing in folks. So thanks again, everybody, and we'll catch up with you all next time on the Oilers YYC podcast.